Guys, on this episode, I'm going to talk about the art of humility, which I think is very important for us as creatives or designers, because what that means is you're willing to keep an open mind on taking on feedback and criticisms. Now, this was one thing that I used to find very difficult for myself, just because I have a bit of an ego. I'm sure most of us designers do have a little bit of that because we're so passionate about the work that we do, and we take pride on the things that we actually do. When someone comes in and say that sucks, it really does hurt the feelings, doesn't it? So on this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and why I think learning humility is very, very important. Guys, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of the art of humility. What that means as a designer is pretty much taking on the perspective of others. And the reason why I think this is important is because throughout my experience, being a designer and running through a business, most creatives have their own ego. And what that means is obviously we're so passionate about the work that we do, that it can be difficult to take on feedback sometimes from others that may not necessarily have the same views or aesthetic views to how we view things. So I guess it comes back to the fact that if you wanted to become a professional working designer, then it's very important to put your egos out of the door and to actually see the whole process as a collaborative thing rather than an art project for yourself. Where it helps in the past for me personally is, taking on feedbacks actually gives us, a different kind of perspective that eventually could help you in the process that you're going through within a professional brief as well. Because remember that most of the work that you're doing as a business is really not your own initiated art project, but as a matter of fact, it's actually a project that's been rewarded to you, and you've got to get it done for the client or the customer, right? So it's actually very important to take on their perspective on things, and to do this successfully. I think it's very important as well for you to be able to work in a team environment. If you have the luxury of doing that, then that's really, really great to get input from your other designer fellows or your manager, or if there was a senior designer, that's great, or a creative director or whatever, because then you're getting a lot of different views that may be able to enhance what you're doing. The other thing that I find is that sometimes sometimes that it's not very easy to take on this feedback emotionally, because it's probably not the nicest things that you want to hear, right? And listening to criticisms it's often quite difficult for most people, but if you get to master the art of trying to take it in rather than defending yourself too much, then I think you're one step further ahead in becoming more successful in what you do, particularly in design, because then you're keeping an open-minded perspective to things, and you're able to become a good listener as well in that way, or practice to become a good listener. And from there, it will do wonders, I promise you, on the things that you actually do at work, on your project that's been assigned to you. Coming back to the fact that humility, it really doesn't come natural to everyone. I can really appreciate that it takes quite a process to get there, or to actually be able to take on criticisms in a way that you'll be able to turn that into this positive energy for yourself. It takes a bit of practice, but by all means, I think whenever you're working on a project, try to push yourself to take on feedback. If no one's giving you any feedback, then ask for it. if everything seems to be so cruisy, then ask for a constructive criticism to make your work even better. Or if there was one thing that could be improved on this, then what would it be? Consider things like that, because then I think it will take your work up to the next level over time. And for you personally as well as an individual, it's going to be very, very helpful because like I said, there's nothing, for me personally, there's nothing more valuable than other people's opinion on what you do. Now, this could be a contradictory statement, but it's really pushing the opposite directions. Well, for me personally, I really welcome everything that comes into me in terms of feedback. So I'd really like to take on criticisms and whatnot, but at the same time, I try to focus on what I originally wanted to do. That sometimes ridiculous comments don't even matter as long as I know what I'm trying to achieve in this project, as an example. So, on top of that, having an end goal perspective to it, that you have a vision on what this project is going to look like or what it's going to be, what the purpose is. I think everything else as a feedback will just, it'll just enhance you throughout the journey, that it will ensure that you're on track, and keeping in mind that, you've got everyone else who cares as much as you for this particular project, if you're working with the right customer. Okay, so that's my tip for the day. Master the art of humility. Don't take feedback or criticisms as a negative thing. There's so many negativity around us, and it really, really kills us. But take on the bright side of it. Take it as a positive energy, that it translates into an actual asset to what you do in your work. All right, we'll leave it there. I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I'd really appreciate it and would love to connect with you all. All right, see you guys.